Today we're going to be replacing the headlight switch on a 94 Mercedes E420. Now there's a complete step-by-step instructions for this on the pelicanparts.com website, and I'll post a link to it either on the video if I can figure out how to do that, because this is my first video, or it will be on my blog at 94mercedes.e420.blogspot.com. Now, one thing they left off the step-by-step on Pelican Parts is the first thing you have to do is disconnect the battery. Anytime you work with the electrical system, disconnect the battery. Even though this is a simple plug and replace and there shouldn't be a problem, don't take a chance frying your electrical system. It's the worst job on any vehicle, trying to repair a bad wiring system. So we're at the trunk because of course that's where the battery is located, and as you can see, you just pull that out of the way, and bear with me, I'm new at this. And down here is the negative. It has a negative written on there, and you can see it's connected to the chassis. And don't use a pair of pliers. Find out which socket fits that, because there's nothing worse than trying to get a battery cable off after you've chewed it up with pliers. This one is a 13 millimeter. I prefer using a deep well because it gives you a little more clearance. This one's pretty loose. I don't have to pry the whatever the hell you want to call that apart with a flat tip screwdriver. It came right off. And when I reassemble it, I will clean this post, because there's a little bit of stuff growing on there, but not much. So now we'll go up front and get started. One more thing, I'm keeping the tools in the trunk. I'm only going to have what I need up front with me, one tool at a time, because when you're working on the interior of a car, tools get misplaced and lost so easily. Just save yourself some headaches and keep them in the trunk. Now the first thing we have to do is remove the surround from the ignition switch. There's a special tool you can buy for about 25 bucks to do this, the trim removal tool. It's on the Pelican Parts and also on the web if you want to look for a cheaper price. But personally, I'm not going to buy one until I need to remove the dash cluster. For something as simple as this little piece of trim here, I'm going to try using just a 1/16 inch Allen wrench, and if I need to, I'll put some vice grips on it so I can get a better pull. But be careful when you do, choke up on the Allen wrench so you don't hit the last 1/4 inch or so, because that's really the only part you use. You don't want to mar that up. So look, that's just how hard it is, and voila, we have access. Now there are two 8 millimeter screws here, and we need to remove those before we move on to the other side. Once again, I'm using a deep well because it just gives you a little more clearance. Standard size one would fit, but why make life harder on yourself than you have to? I'm putting all these screws in the box that the headlight switch came with. And the nice thing about making this video is I can replay it and go back and see exactly what I did if I have problems reassembling. I shouldn't on a job as simple as this, but on a more complicated job, I'm not just helping you guys by making these videos, I'm helping myself. Okay, that's it. Okay, the next instructions are to remove the kick panel and loosen the two 8mm bolts holding the lower dash in place. I'm just going to, instead of remove the kick panel, someone suggested that you just have to make it loose, and we'll see what happens. But here you can see the two bolts that I need to remove. Here's for the kick panel, and there's one for the dash. There's another one over here for the dash. You get the idea. Gonna squat outside the car and give this a shot. By the way, they're all three 8mm. I didn't show you, but you'll see it on your car that there was an additional third bolt in the middle of the two located here and here. It's actually right here. My car, it's already been removed and not replaced, but you may have a third bolt you have to go for. Okay, all three bolts are exactly the same, come with captured washers, and they look the same as the ones that came out on the other side, so you don't have to worry about mixing them. Well, with exception, the one on my car at least, on the right side of the ignition switch does not have a washer. Okay, I'll read the instructions again. All right, the next thing we need to do is just grab on to the headlight switch and pull it off. Took both hands. There's a small bulb right here that you'll want to remove, because you don't want to break it or lose it. Just stick it in the box with the other parts. Now here is a 24mm nut. On some cars it's already been disassembled so you can get it by hand. Mine is factory height still. So I'm going to go ahead and get the socket and remove it. Now it says you can use a pair of pliers to do this, but I highly recommend using a socket. I mean, there's hardly any force to it at all to get it to move. You'd probably be successful, but why risk rounding something off, and it's really tight in there. Now we're going to remove the trim. Pulls right out, and disconnect the headlight switch. Not headlight switch, but the bulb. Now I'm not sure how this goes, so it's going to take me a little bit of fidgeting. I'm not sure how that gets removed. Looks like it snaps in place, but I really can't see how to release it. So what I'm going to do is just leave it up out of the way, and if I need to pull that off there, I will. But I'm not going to risk breaking the ears off that bulb holder when it looks like I can get the job done without doing that. Okay, now it says to pull the parking brake handle out and remove the 3 Phillips head screws. Now these are number 2 Phillips heads. Make sure you use a number 2. Once again, don't strip something, because how hard is it going to be to find a replacement, the exact size, thread pitch, all that. It could be a real pain in the butt. So use the proper tool for the job. As you can see, the 2 lower ones come out without pulling the handle. And this upper one, there's a slot in the parking brake handle, and I'm using a really long Phillips so I can get to it. You got to push it while you're doing this because the angle isn't exactly right. You want to try to keep it as square as you can. You can see it just popped on me there. This is going to be fun reassembling. I'm definitely going to reassemble it with the lower screws first before I attempt to insert this upper screw, because you have to keep tension on it while you do this. And there's just enough room for the head to fit through the slot. German engineering at times is very nice. Okay, now the next step is to remove these 3 8mm bolts. Now I've got my wrench in the back. I got a little grease on my finger for messing with the parking handle, so be aware it could be a little messy in there. Let me go get the tool out of the trunk and I'll be right back. All right. There's not much torque to these. When you put them on, you put the car back together, don't torque them down like crazy. Try to remember how much force you had to remove it and use that much when you replace it. I mean, I'm stating the obvious for a lot of this video. And for most of the people watching this, if you're crazy enough to try to work on a Mercedes in your driveway like I am, you probably know all this stuff already. But in case there's somebody who has never worked on a car before and decided to jump into it, I'm going to say things that I would say to anybody who's new to automotive repair. Plus, it keeps you from having to just stare at a video with no sound. That's annoying for me. So we'll babble on and say all sorts of things that don't really matter just to keep you entertained, because I know that's why you're doing this. That's why you're watching videos, because you want to see me talk about things that don't matter. What I'm doing right now is I'm putting a little bit of friction on the socket because the screw is so loose, the ratchet wasn't working. I mean, that's something everybody, oh, and this one's coming out at a bad angle. It started dropping down, so I had to push it up to get it out of there. Being a little bit of a pain. Just patience. I don't even know if you can see me. I'm like I said, this is my first video. I'll get better at making it so you can see what I'm doing. That's another reason I keep talking, is so I can tell you what I'm doing in case the video isn't clear. There it goes. And as you can see, the dash dropped down a hair itself. And now I need to read the directions again. Okay, the directions say to remove the parking brake handle. I don't think I need to. It will actually adjust enough that I'm not going to remove that parking brake cable. What I'm going to do is go straight to the step where it says to turn it counterclockwise and remove the headlight switch. And it comes right out. Well, let me grab the new one. It doesn't look exactly like the old one, but I'm hoping that they sent me what will work. We'll find out soon enough. So we're going to disconnect. Now it says to look at it so you can orientate it. On the headlight switch, where the ears are here, let me put this where you can see it. There it is. Okay, get it back. See how to my right, there's a slot right next to the base of the threads. And to the left, there's two slots, two tabs, whatever you want to call them. Now, on my car, the single tab is towards the outside of the car, and the two tabs are towards the inside of the car. Now let me go through the top of through the steering wheel so I can get a good angle. And I don't see anything holding it, so I'm just going to pull. It's kind of tight. Got it out. Putting a new one in. And there it is. Now I'm going to reinstall it. Okay, get the ear to the outside, kind of wiggle that in place. Then you can have the ear to the inside and carefully rotate it till it snaps in place. Now what I'm going to do is put the knob back on and temporarily reconnect the battery. I'm just going to slide it on. I'm not going to tighten it. It's tight enough. I don't have to tighten it down. And check to make sure the new switch works. Okay, the headlights work, the side markers work, everything appears to be working, except for when you pull the knob out, it's supposed to stay in position to keep the fog lights on, front or rear. And maybe once I reassemble it, there'll be enough friction to hold it in place, but it doesn't look like that's working on this switch. I bought the genuine Mercedes switch instead of buying an aftermarket version. I don't know if it's just a problem with my switch or what the deal is, but I'll think about it for a little bit and decide if I want to remove this switch and put the old hard to use switch back in, mail this back, get a new one. We'll talk to Pelican, see what they say. Maybe they have some more information. I'll update the blog. I'm not going to update the video because I have no clue how to add something onto a video you already posted. Maybe I'll figure that out, but check the blog. I'll keep you posted. And by the way, reassembly is opposite or reverse. I'm going to film it while I reassemble it, and you can watch it or not, because there may be some fidgeting, some wiggling, whatever, you know. But I'm not going to really say that much. I'm just going to get to it, do the job, and you can follow along. So here we go. Well, here's something I decided, well, maybe it is good you're following along. What I'm going to do is, as long as this dash is dropped, I'm going to put this Phillips screw that's in the center back in while I can see what I'm doing, because this one really is going to be a bear if I don't. Gotta go get the screwdriver. And honestly, the way this dropped, I would say skip even undoing these screws. I don't think it's necessary. This is just extra work here. this is going to be aggravating. No, I'm not going to do that one first. I'm going to go ahead and put the lower ones in first, leave them loose, so that I can adjust as necessary. Tighten them up quite a bit. Loose is a relative term. I mean, I'm going to have them to where they're almost snug, and I'm watching to make sure that hole stays aligned for this third Phillips. Oh man, this is tricky. And I am getting grease all over my fingers trying to do this. Okay. I think I got it started. Now I'm holding it out. I'm holding the switch out with my thumb and first finger and pulling the dash and pushing with the screwdriver at the same time so I get enough torque to this. You'll want these pretty tight. They were pretty tight when I took them off. I'm guessing about 20 foot-pounds is where they were at. I mean, you don't want to go so far as to strip them, but this is the parking brake. You want it kind of tight. All right. Now we'll move on to the 3 bolts. And I've decided I'm going to start with the outside first. Okay, I just got that one started. Okay, I have a problem. These bolts are held on by clips. Moving this around, one of the clips has, these bolts go into clips. Let me just say that. One of the clips has moved, so I got to drop this so I can put the clip back in place. Sometimes it's one step forward, one step back. Okay, let me take this off the tripod. That's what's called lucky. Okay. You can see how this clip has moved. And that's why I dropped the dash. I need to put that back in place and be careful. I'm not sure if it moved when I was disassembling the dash or moved when I was reassembling it, but be sure to check to make sure all the clips are in place before you start putting stuff back together. Okay. Oh goodness. I don't know if I put that screw back in the box or not. Let's look for that if I need to later. No, the screw I was using is still in the dash. Sometimes we get lucky. What I'm going to do, I'm leaving this screw in here, but I'm going to start this really hard one first because it moved. The other two didn't move. Use just the socket so I get a little bit more extension, and I can actually, right before I get it started, I could see what I was doing. Kind of aimed it in there. And I can tell that I was actually hitting on that. Now this one, you gotta strain and peek and all that. We'll go for the outside next. I mean, putting a dash back together is always more difficult than taking it apart. And I do have what's known as a finger ratchet, but I'm not going to mess with that. Oh, that one came out. Messing with this one. So let's put it in there and tighten it up again. Okay. Going back and forth. I mean, you don't want to tighten one side down too far. It'll make it difficult to get the other side tight. Line up, I should say. It would make it difficult to line up the other screws. Okay, and this one's going in. I mean, it's aligned so nicely. I've got it snugged up just using finger pressure. And even though we disassembled the other side first before moving on to here and did some other taking trim off, stuff like that, I'm going to go ahead and put these bolts back in over on the ignition switch before I start putting trim on. Now remember, the one with the washer goes to the left of the ignition switch, and the one without the washer goes to the right. The dash actually has indentations in it to remind me. So I'm thinking that that was factory, not that somebody lost and replaced it with a different screw, because there's not an indentation for a washer over here. Okay, now I've got all the ones on the top finger tight. go ahead and put the 3 in the bottom back on. I'm putting them on before I snug down the ones on top. This would be kind of a pain. I actually got to push the dash in order to get the thread started. I got it started by hand. Give it a few extra twists with the socket so it doesn't fall out while I mess with the other one. And as long as I'm down here, I'm going to go ahead and tighten all 3 of these. Just estimate it at about 10 to 15 foot-pounds. Take it to where it's snug and give it just, I don't know, from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock once you feel it snug at the most. Never tighten a bolt more than you need to. I mean, of course you don't want them to come loose, but you want to be able to take them loose later. And a little more information. The third 8mm bolt I took off that was holding the black plastic kick plate in place, you don't need to remove that one. Just remove the 2, or if you have the 3rd in the middle here, remove the ones for the actual lower dash, but you don't have to remove the other. Now, while I was moving it, the trim ring for the ignition switch just popped off. It just snaps into place. Nothing broke. It just wiggled and popped off. Okay. I'm just taking them to where they feel snug, and then I'll tighten all 5 once I have them all snug. putting about 20 pounds, hell, actually about 10 to 15, not even 20. They weren't that tight when I took them off. They don't need to be gorillaed on there. Okay, I'm going to snap the ignition ring back on. It just clips in place. And very carefully push that in place. Now there's a bit of rubber around the ignition switch that I'm having to push with my thumb while I try to pop this back in. This is a little more difficult than I thought it was going to be. And I'm going to go ahead and remove that so I can concentrate on putting this ignition switch back on. There, that's nice. Because as you can see, they're just clips that slide. So I'm going to slide it. There's a little bit of play with it. Yeah, they just snap right on. And then from this side, you want to slide those clips in that direction, and then that just snaps in place. Now we're ready for the 24mm nut. I'm going to get the socket. I just want to make it a little bit better and finger tight. Don't hit this very hard. Just make it a hair past finger tight. There we go. Yeah, everything's looking fine. I broke my rules and I kept carrying tools up to the front of the vehicle. So I've got 3 here. But basically this is what you need. Phillips screwdriver, 8mm, and a 24mm. And an Allen wrench to pop the trim. That's pretty much it. Let's put the knob back on. Make sure the arrow is pointing up. It's just not wanting to stick out. Well, you can't win them all. Like I said, I'll update you on that. But that's it. The job's done. And it took me a little longer than it should take you because I'm making a video at the same time. But after I reconnect the battery, car's ready to be on the road again. Keep checking this site, because I will be doing more work on this car. There's a lot of maintenance that needs to be done at the 60,000 mile mark, and I'm going to assume it wasn't done. So I'm going to go ahead and replace fuel filter, power steering filter, change the transmission filter, transmission fluid, rear end fluid, differential oil if you want to be specific. And there's a couple other problems with the car. The next video I'm going to do, it'll probably be in a couple of days when I'm off again, is replace the window regulator. This window will not go up and down. So there's going to be a lot of things come back and we'll make it like new again. Well, here's a little PS for you. There's nothing wrong with the new switch. It was operator error. In order for the fog lights to remain on, you have to have it turned to the right with it either in parking light or headlight mode, and then the switch will stay out and the fog lights will stay on. On my old broken switch, it would stay on no matter what position you had the switch in. So, hey, Pelican sent me a great part. I'll probably be buying from them again if they are competitive, because that's the way the world works. Talk to you later.